Hello? Hello, hello, can anyone hear me? Not sure how many people are in the stream today. There's also going to be something new that pops up on the screen as well. There it is. Hold on. The problem with these gloves is they have a hard time working half the time. Sometimes they do, sometimes they do not. Well, to all those present for the stream, hello. This is going to be something new. I have a camera, hand cam, but I'm not sure how frequently I will be turning it on and off, and this is not something that I admittedly will be going out of my way to do because I do not like doing stuff of this nature. The only reason why I am doing it is because of verification. At a certain point, I am going to need more definite evidence that I did not use this joystick for the set of restrictions I'm doing for this challenge. If I also sound somewhat muffled, I'm wearing a mask, and a few other things. Just it's very precautionary. Needless to say, I'm very uncomfortable in settings like these, and I go out of my way to obscure my presence as much as possible. But yeah, this is we're going to be attempting to do some. At this point, it's more practice sessions with Gilgamesh because I added no folios and no movement. Yeah. Hello. Nothing much. This is a practice stream for Gilgamesh. I'm sure you can see I have a hand cam at the very least because I wanted more definitive verification for the no movement restriction. So that way you can say I'm not using this joystick. But I will not be going out of my way to do a lot of these very often. This stream is more of a practice session than anything else. And also, if I sound muffled, I have a mask on. Just needless to say, I'm very uncomfortable when I have a camera on myself like this because of the lengths I go to hide my identity. I'm purely doing this for the verification. If I do succeed this stream with completing this challenge with the added restriction of no folios and no movement. But yeah, like things like hand cams will not be very common. See, keep up the good work. The muffle doesn't bother me that much. It's alright. Alright, that's good to know. That should have been a parry. Hold up. Really quick. Also, I'm not sure, before I forget, I'm not sure when the next stream will be. Oh, I messed up. Something else I just realized is I am heavily nerfing myself because the gloves do make it harder to press things consistently. And I have a hard time feeling what I am pressing specifically. A few days ago, I managed to defeat Pantheon 3. Hold on. Messed that up anyway, though. A few days ago, I managed to defeat Pantheon 3 and worked my way up through 4. I'd say my experience with Pantheon 4 enemies was easier and more fun than Pantheon 3 ones. I couldn't say the same about Pure Vessel. Yeah, Pure Vessel is, I guess one of the last major skill checks in the game at a certain point. Other than the Radiance, of course. Alright, first part of the... Damn. Yeah, these gloves do make it hard, but I have to deal with it. My biggest flaw is forcing myself to use Shadow Cloak at every instance of his attacks. I hope to out DPS him, but stagger him quickly, but that just doesn't work yet. Pure Vessel can be a very, it is possible to DPS check him, if you will, but that's only after you've had, like, a lot of experience with the fight. That was way too close. I almost missed that. Flame Bolt Blade. Flame Bolt Blade. 1, 2. That was damage. Yeah, I couldn't even tell when he was going to attack or the hitboxes of his nail summoning attacks, yeah. Actually, now I think about it, this current moment in time. From my experience, the best way to avoid that attack you're talking about, where he like jams his nail into the ground and then summons the larger wall of pure nails, is to try and stay as close to Pure Vessel as possible. So that way you can damage him while that phase is up. But also, from my experience, it's more consistent to dodge it that way. Because from what... If I recall correctly, I do not believe... Actually, I should not say that. It's not that he does not have a hurt box for that attack. I try to attack him at the same time. Yeah. Just in general, Pure Vessel is a fight that requires a lot of practice. Either my nail comes short or I get hit with the nail hurt box. Yeah. Alright, that was close. Even though I have the mark of pride, it comes short sometimes. That's a reset. I should have stayed out of the... not get those 2 additional hits because of how he dodged, but it should just barely be fine. Or not, now that I'm looking at this. Yeah. Well, that's actually a good thing, because now he will not summon the Genji shield later. This is going to be close though. Damn. Okay, yeah, this is iffy. Not sure if I'll have to go for another. Yeah, I am going to have to. Yep. Just have to wait for him to summon it. Well, he did not. That was unfortunate. I need to figure out a better cycle for that, because it's either I go for 1 flame bolt and then the rest is disorders, or wish I knew anything about Final Fantasy at all. Well, the good thing about Final Fantasy is that all the games are self-contained to some extent. All the spells, all the summons and stuff, they're all technically the same character. Or at least, that's a reset. Variations of the same character. Like every... hold on. While not all the games have, like things like fire materia or just materia in general, the spells you see, on the right over there, fire, aga, like that carries over to all the games. They're just that's just what the magic is referred to as, and then the summons, like people like Odin, Bahamut, Kujata. I'm not sure about Alexander. Phoenix definitely, Titan, Ramoon, Leviathan, Shiva, Ifrit. All of them are, and the Chocobo summons. All of them are. They all carry over to the games, and they're in a lot of instances, like with Gilgamesh, they're implied to be the same character. Or at least it's heavily implied that they're a version of the character you met before. So, Final Fantasy VII, it's its own self-contained story, but a lot of the stuff with, like, certain summons like Gilgamesh, they carry over to other parts of the franchise. 7's story is, basically a political commentary is not exactly the right word, but it can be used to describe it. It is a political commentary on basically large corporations, big business taking over and taking advantage of not just the less fortunate, but in some cases causing immense damage to like the planet itself, all for the sake of profit. So in 7, there's this resource called Mako, and it's literally the planet itself. I guess you could say the same thing about Earth, but in a truest sense of the word, the planet itself is alive, and it has its own like a cardiovascular system in the life stream, which is where once someone on this world dies, their spirit returns to the life stream and eventually is spat back out as a new person in a way. Not exactly reincarnation, but think of it like it recycles souls in a way. Not just to continue the circle of life, but also to keep itself alive. And the live stream in this universe, a company by the name of the Shinra Electric Company, they figured out a way to manipulate it and use it as energy. However, it's finite. They can't just keep sucking the planet dry, or they'll literally kill not just humanity, but everything on the planet. It'll become a lifeless husk if they keep, you know, extracting Mako. So you play as a group of eco-terrorists, for lack of a better term, called the Avalanche. And the group you follow specifically is a splinter cell that does not agree with the main methodologies of the primary Avalanche group. So they broke off and they took a very much more direct approach to how to deal with the Mako reactors in Shinra. So they bombed the Mako reactors, and in a lot of instances it does cause like a mass loss of life, at the very least, or like high injury count. But that is like a main part of what the story is. There is a lot more to it than that. Like the main antagonist of the story is Sephiroth. He is a byproduct of Shinra and what they've done, but his goals are detached from them to some measure. I was hoping I could get Perry in there. Other stories follow different plot lines and storylines. Like Final Fantasy 15 takes place in a place called Eldia, if I recall correctly. I might be wrong about that, but the entire globe is comprised of 2 major countries, not multiple, just 2. Or at least towards the events of the game, that's what it ends up becoming. It's a conflict between a place called Isalem and Niflheim. And the Niflheim Empire is basically trying to do the equivalent of a complete planetary takeover. And they've been warring with Insomnia to try and complete that takeover. By the events of the game, they do carry out an attack against Insomnia. That is successful, but only partially. They take over the city, but they wanted to also kill the prince, the son of the king of Islam, Noctis. But because he was under the impression that he was going to marry the, I guess, a princess of Niflheim, although it's a bit complicated. She was a part of one of the captured countries, if you will, or subjugated countries that Niflheim came and took over. And Noctis was under the impression that if he married her, it would cause a ceasefire at the very least, or a truce. Okay, that is a massive hitbox, now I know. But they carried out the attack while he was on his way to marry the princess. And, you know, now it's up to him to restore balance, if you will. Stop Niflheim from doing their total takeover and all that stuff. The cosmology of FF seems interesting, but I'm not sure if, hold on. I might have to get back to you on that, because at least until I stagger him. Alright, at best I'm going to only be able to go for one more. Alright, please summon it. Yep. Alright, what were you saying? I wish I knew... Oh yeah! Yeah, I played a lot of the Persona games. 2 so far. Well, technically 3. I played the original Persona 5, I played Royal, and then I played Persona 3 Reload. Persona 5 is one of my favorite games of all time, so... And I haven't beat Reload yet, but that's purely due to time. That's the problem. Alright, what else did you say? You played any of the Persona games? Cosmology of FF seems interesting, but I'm not sure if I will ever get into it. Yeah, it's understandable. If you do give it a shot, I would unironically recommend you play, obviously, 7. Whether it be, the remakes or the original. Or probably an easier one to get into for the franchise might even be 15. The entire purpose of 15 was meant to be for new players and returning ones. Persona... If I ever have this set up to play any FF game, sure, why not? Yeah, that's fair. But, when it comes to Persona, they are obviously very heavily, acclaimed, right? For a lot of reasons, a lot of good reasons, I would say, especially after playing them. But they definitely... I would not say they're an acquired taste, but, if you are not into, like life simulator games, for example, that is horrible. Life simulator games, there's certain aspects of them that might make them harder to get into. One aspect, like, for the average, like, Western gamer might be, like, how overtly anime they are. Or specifically for, like, Persona 5, right? How unapologetically Japanese they are. That's a factor that can play into, like, whether or not someone might take it seriously. And how, with Persona 5, a lot of the antagonists and the villains you fight in the story, this is horrible, are based off of, like, real criminals and, like, that have existed in Japan. And I'm talking in recent Japanese history. So a criticism I hear a lot about some of the antagonists in Persona 5 specifically is how cartoonish they are and how unrealistic it is, even though that shows how unironically ignorant they are. Not even, like, to say, like, out of, like, malice or making fun of them, but all the antagonists, to my knowledge, were all based off real people. And not just that, they were toned down from the stuff they did in real life for the game. They were heavily toned down. One such instance was a volleyball coach that he was an extreme abuser. Like he physically abused all of his male students, and he sexually abused all of his female students. And a lot of stuff he did, they did keep that element that he was like physically abusive to his male students, and he, in the story, it's implied that he did at least sexually assault one of his female students. It's definitely implied that he wanted to during several instances of the story. But, like I said, a lot of the stuff he did in real life, he did not do in the game, once again because of how obscene it was. So they had to tone it down. So when I hear instances like that, people saying that the Persona games are unrealistic, I just think of that, how it's based off an actual, like, true crime case that happened in Japan. That's a reset. To be honest, I'm not against any good writing for whatever inspiration, as long as it isn't heavily referenced and reinforced. It might creep or discomfort others, but I don't know. Yeah. With the Komoshida stuff, I know that there was there might have been like a fair amount. That was the name of the antagonist, by the way. The name they gave him in the story, at least. I do not remember what his name was for the actual case, but in the game they called him Komoshida. And his design as well is very much so based on what the guy actually looked like. A lot of the stuff like Kamoshida, I know that for some people they found it very off-putting, at the very least. But I would say it was handled tastefully and respectfully. And how just a lot of the issues that's talked about in Persona 5 are strictly like actual Japanese issues that you would not really see anywhere else outside of Japan. Okay, that was close. 1, 2. What about the Joker? I've heard a lot about that guy. What's it? He's the main protagonist of the game. Typically the protagonist for the Persona games in the games themselves, sorry, they go unnamed. Or at the very least, there's no real implication as to what their name is in the game itself. But in outside media, like interviews, for example, that maybe some of the game directors would have, they talk about the names for the characters and stuff. And the only name that that Joker gets in the game is Joker, because that is... Damn. That is his Phantom Thief name. His code name, at least. Outside of that, it's implied that his it's implied that his real name is one of two things. They've gone back and forth about it over the years. It's either Ren Amalia or Akira... What was the last part? I don't remember. I don't remember what the other one was. But generally, it's either they make two names, right? And then go out of their way not to clarify which is their actual canon name for the protagonist. Outside of a few instances. Like, I'm fairly certain that the protagonist for Persona 3 is, like, officially named. It's not even debated. The only other one I can think of that might be, like, truly officially named is the protagonist for Persona 4, not 3, sorry, Persona 4. The protagonist for Persona 4 is the only one, to my knowledge, that is genuinely and officially named. But the one for 3, I think, is still iffy, and the one for 5, it's up in the air still.
Game over, huh?
The situation feels like for Pokemon games, yeah, that's true. But even then, like, a lot of the protagonists are like the selectable protagonist avatars for the Pokemon games. Even they get, like, not just names, but just canon identities and stuff, like Red and Gold, for example. Those are two instances. May as well is another one. Those are just the ones I can think of off the top of my head. But Persona specifically, they seem it's like an unwritten rule, if you will, where they just go out of their way not to, like, directly name the protagonists. Outside of a few specific instances, like once again with Joker, and that's not even a name, that's a title. One, two, one. That's the problem. I feel like you would really love both the gameplay and storytelling / lore of the Danganronpa. Hold on a second. Have you watched the anime? Sorry, I'm really close to the mic. You watched the anime or the games? No, very little. I wonder if you've seen it. I've heard a lot about Danganronpa, yeah. But I haven't watched the anime. I definitely have not played the games. And in a way, it does seem like a franchise I'd be interested in. But I think Danganronpa is one such instance of something. I have this weird thing. I do not remember. Actually, were you there for the stream I talked about it in? I don't remember. One of my streams not that long ago. I talked about how, for some reason or another, I just have an incredibly hard time getting into anime. It's not even out of a direct dislike. It's just for some reason I have a stupid hard time sitting down and watching anime, or doing anything with anime in general. And there's a few times where, for example, with games, they might walk that line a little bit too much, and by extension make it hard for me to like properly get into whatever it is. I think another example of that would probably be like the Fire Emblem games. But then again, with them, it's much more of a them being more out of reach. Oh yeah, you were there. So yeah, I think Danganronpa might be one such category of where, because of how it is just like a playable anime at a certain point, it might be harder for me to get into it. Not even, like I said, not even out of a direct dislike, it's just a weird thing about me. And it's not like I haven't watched or enjoyed animes or gone out of my way to watch certain animes. Like, the other day, well, currently I'm watching through Dan to Dan. I watched the newest episode yesterday. And I am excited for the next one that they're doing, I guess 5 days from now, because I think it's weekly that they're doing it. I also finished, at least so far, quote, I have to watch season 2. But I finished most of Jujutsu Kaisen and I really enjoyed that. Honestly feel the same way about most anime or gameplay franchises, and even when I wanted to dedicate myself and get into something, or get into it, sometimes stuff would have gotten it in the way, yeah. This one time when I was playing Earthbound on my phone emulator, my save file randomly got deleted, progress about 40 to 30%. I believe then I felt empty, my save got deleted. Jesus. Yeah, stuff like that can really suck. Oh, I moved. God. I haven't had too many, or I have not had too many instances of save file deletion in my life, thankfully. The closest I think I could say I have is like way back in the day, for example, with memory cards. So if I lost one of my memory cards for something, then there goes an entire save game, just anything like that. Never wanted to start again, although I want to experience the true Earthbound myself. I couldn't bring it. Yeah. I'm a purist like that as well. Well, not... How do I say this? For the most part, when it comes to things like that, I'll describe myself as a purist. Like, if, for example, if I wanted to play like the original Super Metroid, I would go out of my way to buy a Super Nintendo and then a Super Metroid cartridge, and I would play it that way. Even though I'm more than aware of like there's 100 different million ways to emulate the original Metroid. I just would prefer to play it, I guess the way it was intended. Hold on. Alright. That should have been a parry. And the game devoured my input. God, my ears. Sorry with all this like mask stuff I have on. It's a little rough on my ears. They're starting to hurt. I also have headphones on top of them, so that is definitely not helping. Back, sorry, been gone for 2 minutes or so. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Honestly, I might switch back to Disorder. Because then I know for a fact that I have the ATB I need. Anyways, the point stands, as most of the time it feels like apathy trying to get into a fresh, new French. Yeah, but you should mention apathy. There's a thing in Persona 3 specifically called apathy syndrome. Although it's not... It's hard to describe, and it's probably something best left to be experienced in the game itself. But yeah, especially the more daunting of franchises, like I guess either Transformers or Star Wars, for example, because of just how much stuff they have in them. To start them, it would feel more like a chore than actually anything else when it comes to enjoying it. At least that's way I could see it being viewed by like the average person. Me myself being a Transformers and a Star Wars fan most of my life, if not all my life at this point, I will not say it's that hard to get into the franchise, but then again, I know everything for the most part. It's not even like trying to be arrogant. A while back I watched like I watched like a 3-4 hour long iceberg video on the Transformers franchise, and I was familiar with almost every single item on that iceberg except 3 items at the very... It was like 3 or 4 items at the very bottom of the iceberg. Everything else I either had an idea about or was intimately familiar with. So it'd be one thing if I said, oh, it's not that hard. But once again, I had the advantage of I was around or there when a lot of the stuff in the franchise was new or just happening. So to someone who's new, having to go through like 50 plus years of history just to get to the franchise, Yeah, that might be a bit to ask for. So we'll say about the mainstream or well-known / love fictions, for example, Code Geass, Full Metal Alchemist, Bleach for anime. And then what is that? Hyper Light Drifter? That's a new name to me. Binding of Isaac I've definitely heard of. Binding of Isaac might be harder to get into in general for the average person. Because it's a roguelike, and on top of that, it's had a litany of updates since its creation, and DLCs. And there's so much content in that game. A while back, I found a YouTube channel that specifically their purpose is to go over, like, basically Mythbuster type things. Like, myths that exist or surround the game in one way or another. And every other video is something new. Like, it's either he discovers something new about the game, or it was something that his viewers brought up. He never heard about, he tested it and found out it wasn't true. But the fact that the fact that he has like that many videos on the subject of Binding of Isaac and finding out something new about the game to this day, and that game is like, I don't even know how long. I know probably bare minimum 15 years old at this point. All that stuff in the game would probably make it harder to get into. The thing with the Binding of Isaac definitely goes with Dead Cells or Terraria as well. Yeah. I tried to play Dead Cells, but couldn't get past 2 or 3 hours if I recall. The gameplay overwhelmed me a lot. Yeah, Dead Cells is another example. And they're still updating the game. I have no idea if the developers like have any plans of making a different game yet, or if they still have updates for their game. Because not that long ago they did a Castlevania collaboration DLC. So they're still adding stuff to the game, and yeah, it can be overwhelming. I also played Dead Cells. And the only reason why I have not gone back to it is just because I've been far too busy in my life. I used to roguelikes, it seems. And the problem with Terraria is it looks way more complicated than it is promised. Or looks like compared to Minecraft. The most part, comparisons. Yeah, that's fair. Especially with, I guess a lot of things that make Terraria that bit more complicated is its own community. Because, I do not know if they went back on it, but I heard a while back, maybe like 2 years ago. Not wording my sentence properly, so yeah, no, it's fine. But like, I heard a while back that Terraria was like at some point they were planning on doing like their final major update to the game, and maybe even final patch to the game. But I don't remember. You'll have to take my words with a grain of salt because I'm not familiar with the game in that regard. But a lot of stuff that makes Terraria that bit more complicated is its own community, as the modding scene for that game is absurd. And a lot of the mods, they're so not only just difficult, like they cater to a very specific kind of player. Like a player that goes out of their way to do like the hardest thing in a video game imaginable for no random reason other than to say, I did it, or because I felt like it. And this also applies to how they change the crafting system. Not change, but there's this item called the Eternum, I think it was called, in one of the Terraria mods. And it has like one of the longest crafting recipes in video game history just to make just to make it. You have to go through like 100, like 900 plus items and craft them all down to make this one item. That's how complicated it is. And when you have like all these different mods that interact with each other in different ways, and just like a lot of stuff in the mods themselves, it definitely can make it more overwhelming than it already is. If you're out here bringing Wither Storms or Star Platinum from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Stardust Crusaders into the marvelous 2D world of Terraria. Yeah, the crafting field of Terraria is sure different than the story tells. In a lot of ways, even the base Terraria still has some of those things. Like, some of the stuff that you have to craft in that game, you have to go through like 30 different plus items. That's an exaggeration, but that's just an example. It's nowhere near as bad as like some of the stuff where the modding's being right. But I guess another problem that it could have that would be off-putting to some people, especially if they're not dedicated to the game or if they do not really particularly like the game, is one of the swords in the game. I do not know if it's still this way, but one of the swords in the game requires you to have the copper sword, which is the sword you start with. That's the problem. And if you throw out the copper sword, then it does not respawn to my knowledge. And I do not remember if you can craft it. So you would actually have to go out of your way to create a new world just to make the thing you need. One of the ultimate weapons in the game. Hold on, I'll probably have to get back to your comment in a minute. This is crunch time. Alright, this is going to be cutting it close. Damn. Well, I messed that last part up. I downloaded it on my phone, played for an hour or so, I believe. It was fun for a while until huge instant flying eyeballs started appearing, or insane flying eyeballs definitely trying to kill me. Yeah, that's something else the game doesn't directly tell you. That eye you're talking about is called the Eye of Cthulhu. And if I recall correctly, the way it works is if a certain amount of time passes, or it's tied to something you do in the game. Once you make like a certain item, or there's a few things in the game that work that way. Once you like make a certain item, progress past a certain point in the game, or after a certain amount of time passes, the game will actually just spawn a boss to kill you. Not even to kill you, but just to like make you engage with it to some degree. And the Eye of Cthulhu is a mandatory boss, to my understanding. You have to fight it, I think. Well, not have to, but if you want to properly progress through the game, you have to fight it. Then I thought about all the different boss games, items, or all the different game bosses, items, biomes, new areas, dungeons, etc. I decided to turn it down after that instance. Yeah, that's fair. A lot of the indie games that are still like supported by the developers to this day especially after like years after their creation, right? For their audience, stuff like that's really good, but if you're just trying to get into the game, it can be incredibly daunting. And Cloud can cancel out of it for some reason. That was close. A game, I think I could use that as an example from my own experience, just because of how much stuff there is in the game. And also because of how high the skill ceiling is to get into it. It's not a single-player game, but it is a multiplayer game that is no longer supported, unfortunately, that I used to play competitively, called Star Wars Battlefront 2. A lot of the stuff in that game that even just the average seasoned player would consider to be bare minimum knowledge in order to be passable at the game, or just like integral to the way a lot of the competitive duels are, for example, right? Literal, what most in the community would consider bare minimum knowledge, the game does not tell you about, and you have to go out of your way to ask players about it, just to try and get an understanding. So that's why I fell in love with Hollow Knight. So easy after seeing it for years and years, and then finally being able to bring me into the world of Hollow Knight. But the mechanics and the story are the thing that intrigued me. Of the game, as well as it. Okay, yeah. Sorry. I might just try Disorder. And I would say that Hollow Knight is generally very easy to get into. Now, in terms of like, I guess something that a lot of people do not really think about when it comes to, I guess, more casual gamers, or people who treat gaming not even as a passion, but purely as a way to relieve stress, for example. Yeah, they'll play a game, but I would unironically say the amount of people who play those games for those reasons and then actually finish them is very much so dispiriting. Like, if you could see it on a graph, it would be like a noticeable difference. Like, compared to like how many of them said I finished this game because I loved it or whatever, right? That wasn't close. That's also a point to be made. Yeah, so a lot of people, they'll play a game and love it, right? But they'll never actually finish it. But when you ask about this, I loved the game. It was an amazing game. That was, for the most part, whenever people talk about gamers, I do not think a lot of people think about just how big the gap is between casual gamers and people who are genuinely passionate about games. Not to discredit anybody who, isn't that degree of obsessive with games, right? But I know a lot of people who said that they genuinely enjoyed their time with Hollow Knight, but they said the game was too big, and they couldn't finish it. I'm sure many casual Pokemon players are oblivious to the lore and plot of Black and White, and the past of N, motivation of Team Plasma. Yeah. It's been a long time. No, I will be, I guess, honest. I have actually not played most of the Pokemon games, but I have watched, like, the anime and stuff. I guess depending on who you ask at this point, it might be just more like a cartoon than an anime. At least maybe back in the day. But yeah, I watched the anime, right? Ash Ketchum, Fish Journey, all that stuff. And I watched it for a good long while, up until a certain point. I think the last major entry in the anime I watched was Sun and Moon. But a lot of what I understand about like Team Plasma, for example, or End story specifically, is from the anime. But you're right in what you say that the average Pokemon player who just plays the game probably has no idea about like a lot of the intricacies with like certain story elements with either Team Plasma and all that stuff, or just what in general what's happening in Black and White. But that goes for most games. Like the average person who plays Hollow Knight and actually understands what's happening in Hollow Knight is probably the same amount of like compared to like people who play like Bloodborne, for example, and then people who actually have an idea about what's happening in Bloodborne. That's stupid. They'll probably treat every one of the Pokemon games like little kid collects Pokemons on his journey to become champion and defeats the evil bad team, even though that is base premise for every game. Every game of Pokemon, there's still more than... Yeah, like, I guess one story I might be more familiar with, writing world building for characters and interactions, etc. Yeah. One such instance of that I can think of from, the Pokemon games is, Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. Like, a lot of the stuff with, Cynthia in the Elite Four and, a lot of that stuff that happens narratively, and even with like Arceus and Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, all of them, it happens after the main story of the game to some extent. And most people, if they're just playing the game to quote beat it, then they'll never do the Elite Four. To be for real, the things Cyrus did are pretty messed up. Who is Cyrus? I know the name, hold on. I can't remember. It's been too long. I just can't remember at this moment in time. On top of that, I'm very distracted. Bro ain't even in his 30s. He's 27 if I recall. That's to restart the entire universe. Oh wait, I think I know who you're talking about. Wasn't it the guy with like greenish hair? He had like a black outfit, I think. I don't remember. So that's the main antagonist of Diamond Pearl, leader of the... I think they were called, damn. What were they called? Was it Plasma and Diamond and Pearl? No. Name of the team. He has blue spiky hair. White and black. Yeah, that's the guy I'm thinking about. Plasma's black and white. Yeah, and then Cynthia had to help you deal with him, and then as well as like Giratina. But even then, a lot of the stuff, like you said, that happens with that, a lot of like the finer details and the stuff that gets like ironed out happens after the main story. And then there's like the post story, right? All the Pokemon games to some measure have like a post story after you beat the big bad. Obviously there's the Elite Four and stuff. And probably the Elite Four that most people are intimately familiar with to some measure is the one from Diamond and Pearl. primarily due to Cynthia, in all honesty, let's be honest. Because at this point, Cynthia's reputation is so, like, prominent. And I would even go as far as say, like, the average Pokemon fan, the reason why they think of the Elite Four for Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum specifically, once again, because of Cynthia. Hold on, I lost my train of thought. But I guarantee you most of them don't even know who the other members are outside of Cynthia. I think I would have had it if I waited. Now, most of the actual stories before defeating the champions in every Pokemon game, they're almost fleshed out every time, most of the time. There's some new Delta episode stuff after defeating Steven in Omega Red and Alpha Sapphire remakes. This is just one instance. Delta episodes include catching Mega Rayquaza and fighting Deoxys, etc. Yeah, I guess that's fair. Like I said, I know a lot when it comes to Pokemon, unironically, but at the same time, I have not played most of the games. I would like to. Especially because at a certain point, I'm going... like... Even now, in a way, I'm currently going out of my way to try and find a way to fight Cynthia. Because I think you might have been there for that stream as well. Or that stuff. Where I talked about how I have like a plan or objective, if you will. Like I'm headhunting some of the hardest bosses in video game history. And Cynthia has a reputation for a reason, so... Can't remember the team name. Was not paying attention. Can't remember the team name in Sinnoh games. I'm on Unk status, bro. Well, here's a real test of that. Are you familiar with... Actually, what's a better one I can use? Are you familiar with a game called Decap Attack? Valo from Legend of Arceus is harder than Cynthia. Well, Valo just breaks. He's a sand situation. There's very few instances in video game history where you get a boss that's truly impossible in the sense that I have never heard of that. Well, then you're not in Unk status. If you heard of that, then I would have been like, okay. I know what it is. It's an old, I think, Sega Mega Drive game, if I recall correctly. 16-bit machine. Sega Genesis. But yeah, Valo is one of those instances, rare instances, where the game decides to make a boss that, when you look at the standard conventions of whatever game is, right? It's by definition impossible for a variety of reasons. Like Sans, he steals your first attack. You can't hit him. He punches through your iframes. Bro, it's Galaga, now I remember. Damn. I didn't do it quite right. Yeah, Galaga is another, like, classic video game. But Valo is the only time in Pokemon history where the opponent you're fighting decides, well, I'm going to have 8 Pokemon, there's nothing you can do about it, and you have to beat me with your 6 without dying. And if you die at any point, you have to restart the whole fight. Valo literally breaks the conventions of Pokemon and how it works and everything we understand about it. At least everything that we've understood about it for like the past like 30 years, bare minimum. But that's what makes them. The problem with Volo is an upgraded version of Cynthia's team, 2 Giratinas, 1 base, 1 origin. I would not say upgraded, because the true upgrade of, well, not directly, because if we're referring to her, like her base team, for example, then the harder version of Cynthia would be the Diamond, Brilliant Diamond, and Shining Pearl games. Because in that game, because a lot of these new gen Pokemon players, they were feeling themselves a little bit too much, and they were talking smack about Cynthia and saying, "Oh, bro, she's easy." But then again, you had Google. If you're telling me that you fought Cynthia and you did not look anything up about her team, or at the bare minimum, you did not have like any form of modern knowledge that was not present at the time when Diamond and Pearl first came out, then you're being disingenuous at best and lying at worst. But in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, right, because of all the new gen Pokemon players, the kids, if you will, they were talking so much smack that they actually gave Cynthia's Pokemon for her fight like hardcore competitive Pokemon stats. Like perfect IVs, perfect stats, perfect natures for all the Pokemons that she has. Pure, like, turbo competitive everything. So in that instance, that would technically be more of an upgrade, like, at least conventional term of upgrade. If you're going in blind against practically any Pokemon boss, you probably might not even have an answer for their team. Yeah, Ace Pokemon. Once again, like, Cynthia has a reputation for a reason. And you gotta think about how, like, traumatizing it must have been. Because I did not grow up playing the Pokemon games. That was a little after my time. A lot of games I grew up playing were way older. It's likely you won't have an answer for Garchomp. Yeah, that was what I was about to bring up. If you're completely blind, casual gameplay. It's funny you should mention that because, I don't even remember what it was. I don't think he ever got to Cynthia, though. Just for, not even, like, the final boss, but for one of the bosses in, a friend of mine, he bought the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl game, right? I think it was Brilliant Diamond, specifically. He bought it, and, he was playing it, right? And he brought up the fact that, like, I'm using a cheat sheet. Like, I have, like, a notepad next to me with, like, all the moves and stuff and, like, the turn orders. And I asked him how far along in the game he was. I think he said, like, the first or second gym. Maybe even the third. So that should tell you. That's probably where... Not even to call out my friend, but when it comes to certain games, like, that he doesn't obsess over, an apt description for him would be, like, more of a casual gamer. So for a casual gamer when it comes to Pokemon, the way they would get annihilated by even like one of the lower end bosses in some of those games, just due to a lack of understanding, let alone against Cynthia with her team that was literally given perfect IVs. And because the devs, they can literally do whatever they want. They programmed physically everything to be perfect, where there's not a single flaw in any of the stats for Cynthia's party. With Volo, it's not even necessarily that it's an upgraded version of his fight. It's, once again, he breaks the game. He's a rare instance in video games where the boss just decides, I'm going to do whatever I want and there's nothing you can do about it. And when they do that, it makes the fight borderline impossible. At least by standard conventions, because you're still stuck having to fight the boss with standard conventions, and they can do whatever they want. Sans, I would say, is the pinnacle of this in video games, as he is not held back in any way, but you are. Like, he steals your first attack, you can't hit him, he punches straight through your iframes, there's nothing you can do about it. Everything about Sans' fight, he teleports mid-fight just to hit you. Yeah, Cynthia's finally fight Team Cop and Platinum at the... Hold on. 1, 2... 1, 2... 1... And the Distortion World is merciless with the fast-hitting Pokemon and has a reputation of ending yeah. Like, Cynthia only gets harder the second you go anywhere near any form of Nuzlocke. The second you get anywhere near the concept of a Nuzlocke with Cynthia, her fight goes from, like, very difficult to borderline impossible. And, like, because of Garchomp and Melodic and Spiritomb, I think, are some of the primary reasons for that. Maybe Roserade? No, it's her Togekiss, sorry. Her Togekiss, Melodic, Garchomp, those are some of the primary reasons why her fight sucks. Once you go anywhere near the concept of a Nuzlocke. Cause Togekiss is a brick wall. Melodic is a disgusting special attacker from what I recall. And Garchomp, he's unreasonably fast, even in the old game. Let alone once you go to Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, where they actually give him competitive stats and make him faster than he's ever been. Same thing goes with Sans fight. He introduces completely new game mechanics which you can't be prepared for against if it's your first it's not even like if it's your first time fighting him. I knew, like, I got spoiled to the Sans fight specifically, and that's just at a certain point because of how I've often said in the past, Undertale's too big for its own good. It's almost, in today's day and age, it is almost impossible to have a 100% untainted, unspoiled experience with Undertale just because of how big it is. So I knew about the Sans fight when I was first doing the Genocide run. A lot of the stuff with the main story of Undertale I actually did not know about. But the Sans fight specifically, I did know about. And despite the fact that at the very least I had an idea of what was going to happen, he still killed me with his first attack. And it was not like it was not close. He absolutely decimated me with his first attack. And that's with prior knowledge. So Sans' fight, let's note that Sans is still hopeless at this point in the story, and yet throws us his strongest attack in the first turn, which is, yeah. And that's another thing. That he literally says multiple times during the fight that he is not trying. He does not care, because Sans, to some extent, is a nihilist, and understandably so. He's aware that even if he did try, it'll only be so long before the player memorizes my attack pattern and then kills me anyway. So it's hard to blame Sans for not going all out against the human, because he knew there was nothing. It's like the question of how do you kill a time traveler? Well, you bring another time traveler into the fight, and once that happens, it becomes like a paradox to some degree. Technically, a time traveler has to win, it's just who. It can't be both of them. So either it'll be a stalemate or one of them outsmarts the other. But that's what makes Sans' fight so infamous, and that's what makes like another character who's in that same ballpark. This is all rounding back to Persona. In Persona 3, there's a boss fight that lives in infamy. Her name is Elizabeth. She's a Velvet Room attendant, and normally she helps you like summon personas and stuff, and occasionally she'll task you with certain things if she's curious about like the human world, for example, right? his entire game plan is to make us quit, and which is still a reasonably flawed plan. The biggest advantage of Sans is that... Hold on. I missed that parry. The biggest advantage of Sans is that he is mad strong and difficult at this point in the game. Yeah. Yeah, he is. What was it saying? Yeah, Elizabeth, she works the same way as Sans, in the sense that she takes the rules and the standard modus operandi of the game in its totality. I do not know why I did that. And she flips it on its head. She can decide when you summon Persona, she can decide her elemental weaknesses, she can decide what you're weak to at a certain point. She can literally... halfway through the fight during certain points, she'll say, okay, here's how this is going to work now. New ground rules. You're not allowed to change your personas. If you change them, I'll kill you. It's not even like she hits you really hard or she breaks you. She will end the fight entirely. And her fight is so impossibly difficult because of how she changes the rules of the game and how you're operating on her time. And you're restricted by the machinations of the game and she's not. That you physically need a calculator on hand and a notebook to keep track of her turn. To keep track of her turns. She thinks she's rules card for real. Yeah, except she's actually what rules card wants to be. She can decide how the game works. She decides how the game works, and if you don't like it, too bad. Go kick rocks. And when I say she'll just end the fight if you break any of like the rules she set up, yeah. You can be 80 plus turns in, and this is not an exaggeration. The fight can drag on for that long. I've heard genuine horror stories about it. You could be 80 turns in, and if you break one of her rules, she will kill you instantly, unapologetically. And you have to start all over again. Like, that is how horrifically difficult her fight is. And once again, it's because she breaks the, like, what the... Okay. We'll say it's because she breaks the conventions of the game and how it even works. Do you think Sans is still the hardest spot? Yes. Well, for now. My reasoning for saying he's still the hardest boss fight in all of gaming history is, once again, objectively speaking, because he breaks the game literally for no grander purpose other than to kill you. Even like some like super bosses in Final Fantasy VII, or like not just Final Fantasy VII, but Final Fantasy period, right? Or like Kingdom Hearts, for example. They're not designed to break the game. They're just designed to be a skill check for the player to see how well they understand the mechanics of the game. Vice the Immacula is a good example of this in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Or Gilgamesh is another good example of this. If you do not understand how his fight works, it can drag on for an indiscriminate amount of time and be needlessly difficult. But because I have such a high understanding and fine-tuned understanding of his fight, that is why I'm even attempting to do what I'm doing right now, which is fighting him with all the restrictions I added against myself. Because I understand how the fight works. Sans, it doesn't matter what. You operate on his timing and nothing else. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't skip his turns. There's no special tricks. The only one you have does not even really help you that much. Which is like if you hold all like if you have like a segmented D-pad and you hold all the buttons on the D-pad, like the attack he does where he slams you against like the roof and walls and stuff, it auto does it for you. But even then, he still breaks the conventions of the game. He punches through your iframes, he steals your first attack, he teleports half the time. Ironically, he gets multiple turns during your fight, now I think about it, because he teleports, and he literally time travels, he skips through time. Just to hit you. And when you look at all that, Sans's fight was literally designed to be impossible, to some metric. And Elizabeth, in a way, unintentionally was also designed to be impossible. Via technicality. just because of how strict she is about like the rules she imposes mid-combat, right? And then going back to Volo, right? Another reason why I would not exactly call him an upgraded version of Cynthia, but objectively the hardest fight in all Pokemon, is because once again, he just decides, well, I'm going to have 8 Pokemon now, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you have to beat me with the same 6 that you had from the start of the fight. And if you have no healing items or potions or anything like that, well, too bad. You have to restart the fight again. All 3 of them literally look at the rulebook, look at how the game was designed, and laugh at it. And just do whatever they want. And there's, once again, nothing you can do about it, because the player is still restricted to the rule set of the game. And there's no way around it, unless they literally go into the game files and change something and cheat. That would be the only way around it. Until I fight Elizabeth, because I think I also brought up in one of my prior streams, the reason why I even started this whole, like, challenge of fighting all the hardest video game bosses in all of gaming, period, was because of a video I saw. And if I recall correctly, that video placed Elizabeth above Sans in difficulty. And mind you, this is literally like the top 10. At this point in the video, it was at the very end of it, the top 10. Elizabeth was number 2, if I recall correctly. I do not remember who was number 1, and Sans was underneath her. And that's, I do not know if that is still the case for, like the remake of Persona 3. But in the original PlayStation 2 version of Persona 3, whatever. She was that obscenely... No, this is garbage. She was that obscenely difficult. But even then, right, when it comes to bosses like that, how many times can you think in either your recent memory? I think my favorite trope of, honestly, that's my favorite trope of gaming bosses, yeah. The only other boss I could think of... No, I can't even tell you. Even throughout all my research and all the bosses I fought in my own experience and, like, the way they were described and stuff, there's very few, I cannot say that I've either heard or fought personally bosses like that are Sans caliber, where they are literally designed to be impossible. Because that's the paradox of games, right? At the end of the day, the designer has to design them to be beatable. They cannot be impossible, otherwise you cannot sell a game. There's 2 instances of a boss acting like just like a player in the recent RPG games I played. What would those instances be? Oh, I think I could think of another one like that for Final Fantasy VII at least. The Emerald Weapon. That was also on the list. The Emerald Weapon in a way also breaks the game because you have to fight it underwater. And when you fight it underwater, you're given like a 30-minute timer, I think it was. And if you do not beat it in that time, it doesn't matter how close you are, it doesn't matter if you have a Phoenix down, it just ends your run. And there's nothing you can really do about it. So that's also another instance of like the boss imposing a rule set against the player that's specific to that one instance of the game and found nowhere else. Actually, if I recall correctly, I think in that video, Emerald Weapon was said to be harder than Elizabeth. I'd have to watch it again. It's been actual years since I last seen it. But then again, the last time I watched it, going back, I'm like, there are some like questionable choices for bosses that should even be on here. Like, sure, it was at the very bottom of the list, but they unironically said the Ender Dragon from Minecraft was one of the hardest, one of the hardest bosses in all of gaming. So there is probably stuff in that list that should be taken with a grain of salt. But for the most part, when you have like and another reason why I guess I would personally question it is they brought up a boss from Bloodborne, German. That's a reset. And when I looked at the date of the video, I saw it was after the old Hunter DLC was added. So I was confused as to why the Orphan of Kos wasn't in German's place. Because the Orphan of Kos is just objectively harder than German. That was bad. I dodged backwards. That was a movement. Did that out of instinct. This will probably be my last attempt, now I think about it. Because it is getting horrifically hard. Oh, that's the problem. Wow, that was perfect. Actually perfect. Okay. Damn. Yeah, this is going to be a big problem. I'm going to have to parry him this incessantly from this point on. Well, that's the first time I parried that successfully in a while. Damn. Yeah, that'll probably be the last attempt. It is boiling, and I think, how long has this been? Yeah, an hour of practice, just about as good for me. As long as I understand the fight better. I'll probably have to talk with some other challenge running buddies of mine for better ways to deal with it. Well, the same exact thing happens with Azrael Dreamer fight. If not for the gameplay, such story reasonings, hence his fight is easier to defeat. Yeah. Honestly, find Azrael Edgelord's God of Hyper Death design is cool and has a lot of potential. Like a BBEG for Big Bad Evil Guy, I think. Is that what that term mean for D&D campaigns? Or something like that. His skill set powers motives for some to some extent, except others than him being a literal 10-year-old. Yeah, well, his fight is that caliber of like rule breaking in a way for no hit runners specifically. Like the famously Undertale has an impossible to do true pacifist no hit challenge. Like it's one of the few games in all of gaming history where to get the true ending and also no hit the game and take no damage the entire time might be impossible, or is impossible to some extent because of how Azrael's fight works. Same goes for the genocide route, I believe. I do believe that the genocide route is possible. Because Azrael, he has attack patterns that are literally impossible to dodge. And even with Undying and Sans, neither of them have that. The only route you can do is no hit neutral. The only instances of like impossible no hit situations in the genocide route I can think of. Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Sans when he does his wall bounce thing at yeah. But from my experience as a challenge runner, as well as just from other challenge runs I've seen and other challenge runners I've spoken to, if the game ever forces you to take damage and there's nothing you can do about it, then it does not count. That's the reason why you see like no damage Sans videos, and at the very end you see them doing the wall bounce attack, and they still call it no damage, because everything prior to that was done without taking a single hit of damage. So, but with Azrael, just because there's a chance that he gives you a pattern where you do not take damage, but most of his it's not even that he forces you to take damage. It's not like an animation. It's just that without like tasks, for example, because the game doesn't even give you the place to go. Yeah, because tasks, for example, in Azrael's case, it's implied that you might barely be able. So is it actually possible? In the past, like 8 years of Undertale's existence, I have only ever heard of 3 ever no-hit clears of Azrael's final fight. In the totality of the game's history, only 3 people have ever done it. And when I say 3, I mean I think 2 people have done it, and 1 has done it twice. It's a big reason for being called tasks. I think outside of task completions, just because of the fact that there's a chance that Azrael might give you a pattern that's dodgeable, and by extension, no hittable for the entire playthrough. But because of just Azrael being such a roadblock for no hit runs. There was a video someone made about it, a good video called "Why a No Hit Pacifist Run Will Probably Never Happen." It's 3 years old at this point, but still a good video that directly explains a lot of the stuff involved with it. But yeah, I think I gotta end stream here. Like I said, it's unbearably hot. I'm sweating, and I like to cool my room down before it gets any hotter. But yeah, if you have they ever studied those frames for Azrael or how? Yeah, they have. It's just that he literally gives you impossible to dodge or not frames. He puts you in impossible to dodge scenarios because of how some of his attack patterns are. There's like literally no way a human in a run with all the stress and nerves and pressure could dodge it realistically. Does the game select from a pattern? Every single frame is randomly generated. I could not tell you that, but I do know that like a lot of the attacks he does for that final phase are impossible to dodge, just because of how they work. Not even like anything uniquely about how they're designed, just because of how the attacks work. says, well. But yeah, it was a fun stream, fun practice stream. I had a bit more of an understanding for what to do with this fight. Human reaction or input speak, and yeah. But if you enjoyed the stream, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Remember to always stay anonymous.